Australia's Labour Prime Minister, John Curtin.
I'm happy to be back in Australia. I've seen many things and many places. And although every man can be forgiven for loving his own country best, I believe it is an impartial assessment of the facts to say that I have not seen any country or any people better than my own.
Welcome to Curtin's Cast, the John Curtin Research Centre's podcast, brought to you by myself, Nick Dyrenfurth, and Redbridge's Kos Samaras. Each week, we bring you the freshest and most challenging conversations from the world of Australian and global politics, culture and ideas. G'day, Curtinistas. Welcome back to a very special episode of Curtin's Cast, live from Parliament House, Canberra, the home of Democracy Manifest in Australia. And I'm very pleased to be welcoming back my co-conspirator, the one, the only, the guru of Australian polling, Kung Fu Kos Samaras. How are you, Kosy?
Good, mate. Thank you. Thank you for having me in this fine... Well, I've been here for about 20 years. Yeah.
20 years.
We've picked I haven't worked in here for 20 years.
We've picked the dingiest room in Parliament House. Where are we, Nick?
And Kosy, we're very fortunate to be joined by my favourite Australian Maronite, Nine Media's political correspondent based here in Canberra. He's an all-round top bloke, Paul Sakkal. Paul Sakkal, welcome. You've made it on the Curtin's Cast.
I didn't think Kos could do much more media, and then he took on a weekly podcast.
I know, right?
And I thought, how does he fit it into the schedule? No, I'm very happy to be here. I listen every now and then, and I really enjoy it. It's one of the most thoughtful Australian political podcasts that exists, I think, and it's filling a good niche but significant gap in the market. So well done for doing it.
Thank you. I'll slip you a 50 a bit later. But I'm very offended that you're only an occasional listener. Kos, we haven't had you on for a while, mate. So
yeah.
Tell us what's happening with the polls. Your most recent AFR poll. Again, congratulations on the regular gig there. It's a wonderful achievement. I imagine Freshwater's a bit salty.
Are you waiting for the voice?
Pardon the pun.
Yeah, no, we don't wait for things that are not salient to votes. They're not salient to voters' political views.
You're not waiting for council elections?
No, not doing any of that. No, we simply wait based on...
You are doing federal polling. Yes. Federal polling, shock One Nation numbers. Yes. One Nation polling 18% nationally on primary, Coalition 24.
Yep.
I think that's the lowest on record, and that's being shown up other polls like News Poll. Labor, impressive 38. Back in the days of parties polling in the 40s, that would be like, mid to high 40s. Extraordinary.
Yes, that's right.
In 2025.
Crazy.
Greens underperforming at 9.
Yes.
And then you've got the others, and it's the others, they've got that growing cohort. But the big number there, the big data that we want to dive into, Kung Fu style, is that One Nation vote.
Yeah, look, so if we look at the One Nation vote, in terms of what is the makeup of that group at the moment, it's basically people who work with their hands, stand on their feet for a job, and live in the outer suburbs, regions, and rural parts of this country, who have a history of voting for the Liberal Party, and have over time become more and more restless towards them. And so, yes, immigration was the catalyst that basically destroyed the boat the camel's back. But in reality, this has been coming for some time. And so what else do we know about these individuals? They have significant mortgages, or they are renting. They're in their 50s to early 60s. So they are
seeing a populist right vote among younger people, as we're seeing.
No, we're not. So it's still definitely amongst older Australians, but the important bit here is they are struggling financially. So these are people who are in real trouble, and they're in real trouble because if you're in your 50s and your 60s and you're renting, or you've got a massive mortgage, and you're running out of tarmac in terms of your wage earning capacity.
Yeah. Particularly if you're working with your hands.
Well, that's right. And so these are the people that are moving. And it is not a trend that I think is going to reverse itself easily for the Liberal Party. Changing leaders, I don't think will fix that problem either. We can talk about why, but these group of Australians have given up on that major party they've supported.
And so you're identifying housing as a housing, economic insecurity, critical issue.
Well, I would say it's more
so
about
much migration.
I would say it's more about their economic situation.
Yeah.
Right? Housing, yes, is a driver of that. A lot of them would have entered the housing market in the early 2000s. The bulk of them, if they got mortgages, probably bought after 2005, just as the housing market was beginning to pick up pace. And they're doing it tough. Right?
Can we imagine a scenario, Kos, where Australia follows the UK and at the moment Reform are outpolling the Tories?
Yes.
And have outpolled Labor.
Yeah, we can. Yes, absolutely. I wouldn't rule out...
That is seismic, Kos.
Look, the only thing that's stopping One Nation from growing even more at the expense of the Liberal Party is it doesn't necessarily contest all arenas. If it starts doing that and it makes its brand present, there's a Victorian election next year, for example, if it does that, if there's a South Australian election next year, if it does that, and even if it doesn't have a great day in South Australia, if it keeps putting its brand on that ballot paper, these, I would say, peeved off Liberal voters who are feeling the pinch are going to keep jumping over to them.
Your read, Paul. I've also argued, and I've been interested in Kos's feedback. I wrote for your competitor, the Oz, the great national broadsheet. My view is Pauline Hanson is also a drag on the One Nation vote, so it could be on a national basis. My sense is it could be bigger.
Well, that's a question I was going to ask Kos. I've heard it said, and I don't know. I'm interested in your take on this, Kos. I've heard Liberals say that the One Nation primary vote over history, obviously late 90s, she was out of action for a long period, but when she's been in the political arena, the One Nation primary vote has increased in correspondence with the salience of the migration issue. So there's a sense that I think this is Liberals who are looking at this through rose-coloured glasses on their side say migration's at the top of the agenda at the moment. People see her as the spokesperson on that issue. These people are parking their vote in polling when asked about the four parties, but when they actually see a ballot are less likely to put one next to a One Nation candidate. I think pre-election, One Nation was polling at 13, 14% in some polls.
Yeah.
Ended up at, 8?
Yeah. I think that is they are correct in their analysis of the past, but what we're seeing is a continuation of the fragmentation of the major party vote. And what we as researchers do is we look at what's driving that. And so we know that what is coming off the Liberal Party now is a continuation of the decline of their vote. Yeah. Now, the decline of their vote has this component to it that we've just been talking about, but I did some analysis this morning on the way up here. They lose over every cycle now about 470,000 votes net to simple attrition. So it's about 78,000 baby boom and older Australians are dying who vote for them, net loss. So yes, Labor's got people that vote for them in that age bracket that are also passing away, but the proportions are not the same. Gen Z enrolments, there's 750,000 every cycle now. So when you calculate that, that's again a net loss of about 190,000 in that cycle. And about 13,000 citizens enrolling to vote who are migrants every year, net loss. So the real big hit is not migrants. The real big hit for them is two aspects. Young people from Generation Z enrolling to vote, plummeting plummeting the coalition's proportionality in any given ballot. And of course, their vote just dying, right? And so this is what's really hurting them. Coupled with what we've just been discussing. So they're now losing their natural vote too at the same time.
I wonder also with One Nation, we're at a point in the political cycle where polling's less important than almost it's ever been, right?
Yes.
Like people aren't thinking about an actual question of who they vote for. The coalition's totally depressed. They're in this moment of just tearing themselves apart. They haven't had a week without a negative story. And I think importantly as well, Hanson has got no scrutiny yet. So as we get closer to the next election, obviously the UK Labor is having this big debate about whether they turn their guns on Farage or whether they keep fighting the Tories. They've started to attack Farage a bit. obviously they can do a lot more. No one in Australia has started to think about how they attack Hanson. Little Proud, a couple of weeks ago, started saying they're a protest party, they have no solutions on net zero, we actually need to govern the country. Do you think, and Nick, interested in your thoughts on this as well, can Hanson withstand the heat of scrutiny over a term if she becomes a serious force? Because she's got such a bad track record in terms of contentious points. Or are we at a point in political history here where her racial, probably say racist statements about Asians and others are in the rearview mirror, and we're seeing a new era of Hanson where she's tapping into a new type of voter who are less concerned about that type of civility?
This is my hypothesis.
Yeah,
right.
I think it's new.
Yeah, we've got some more data coming, which we want to have a closer look at.
Guys, come on. Give us some
Well, this is for the Financial Review, so they get the scoop on it, right? But
this is the scoop.
No. Well, we haven't got the results yet. We haven't got the results yet. So no, we don't know. It's still in the field. So it's pretty hard.
What are the results at this point say?
Well, the analysis is not just about the raw numbers. It's about the psychological traits of these voters and why are they doing it. It goes to your point, right? Which is the motivation is now no longer about a single issue. It's about a deep sense of being abandoned, right? And they stuck with the Liberal Party at this last election, kind of like, you know what? I'm going to give them. I'm going to stick with them right now because I don't mind Peter Dutton.
Dutton can exemplifies some of their concerns.
100%. That's right. It was, but what is the epicenter of their problem? The economy.
Yeah,
the economics. But they're conservative people, right? So what's missing from the conversation from the Liberal Party over the last 4 or 5 months?
Well, longer than that, Cos. They didn't have they didn't put a serious economic proposition to the Australian people at the previous election. I think when most people thought about what the Libs were offering on economic issues, it was, long free boozy lunches for select businesses. It wasn't a serious economic offering. They scripted the hard work over 3 years. Angus Taylor, who's we'll turn to who might be the answer, and the question is, this is obviously bigger than one individual.
Well, this is the fundamental problem they're facing. They're looking for the Messiah, and the Messiah's not there. Their problem is they've not projected to the country an economic plan that addresses younger Australians' concerns and aspirations from a conservative perspective. In probably, I would argue, all the way back to John Howard's GST. And even that wasn't really a game changer. You would have to go all the way back to Menzies, where you would say the Liberal Party genuinely spoke to the economic needs of a particular class of person that wasn't the upper echelons of our society. Genuinely spoke to them, but didn't take away from others. That's the key. You look at what Robert Menzies did. He pitched to the middle class. It was an emerging middle class constituency, but didn't go around looking for other scapegoats for it. Right? He had an agenda.
Except for communists, of course.
Well, I'm still hiding underneath the bed.
Yeah. That's some sensitivity there.
I know, I'm sensitive about it, Nick.
It's all right. I've got 2 communist grandfathers, mate. We're all in the same boat.
That's right. So that's fundamentally the problem, I think. They're just missing whether the new leader actually understands this challenge and has an economic plan bounce around in their heads. We don't know yet. I haven't seen the evidence of it.
Yeah, Labor, I've written about this at length. Labor had a Messiah complex for a very long time. And there was this idea that we went through, Latham. I know you don't have never had a lot of time for Latham, but
I read Latham's books as a teenager. I liked him a lot. Clearly very flawed, but he's pretty compelling.
You might lose a few friends over that little quip, Paul.
Very flawed, extremely flawed. Let me put it all on record. He's a terrible man.
No. Listen, let's be very clear about Latham. He was ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
He was ahead of the curve on a lot of issues around the idea that it was no longer about civilising capitalism at a nation-state level. We're dealing with globalisation, okay? He was also ahead of the curve in terms of the new divide, which had opened up in the 1990s between the insider political class and the outsiders in the outer suburbs and regions, okay? Some people have just discovered that the last 2-3 years, or going back to when Trump first emerged. He was onto it first. But, he was seen as the Messiah for a period. Rudd was then seen as the Messiah. Then it was Julia Gillard. And then actually, ironically...
that with Shorten too.
No, ironically, no. And
once Rudd changed the rules within Labor about leadership spills, it stabilised. It made them pour their energy into other solutions, right, which is actually very important.
Did stabilise. Now, full disclosure, I, of course, worked for Bill Shorten and was in and around the team at this point, but I can directly quote to you one of his major speeches during the internal leadership contest with Elbow, which he won, which may have been, I think, was a blessing in disguise for Elbow over the years. He should send Bill a Christmas card each year. But Bill actually declared that the age of the Messiahs was over. I'm quoting him directly. The age of the Messiahs was over. And if you look at his leadership, it was polar opposite of the way Rudd operated. It was more consolidative, more collectivist. Okay, and I think Labor drew a line under the sand there. That the Liberals are going through their moment. So the question, it's looking highly. I want to pick your brain on this, Paul. Sussan Ley, will she make it through this week, the last sitting week of Parliament? Will she be given a matter of months? To me, it seems highly implausible that she's going to take the coalition to the next election due as late as 2028.
Yeah, I was talking with some MPs, Liberal MPs this morning. We were making markets for who'd be the leader at the next election.
That's nice.
She wasn't in frame. She'll get through this week. I think unless something extraordinary happens in their party room meeting on Tuesday morning, she'll get through this week. There was some chatter about a month ago that someone like Sarah Henderson, one of the looser right-wingers, would put a no confidence motion up in a party room or put an empty chair challenge up. Those looser units on the right have been tamed by some of the calmer heads in the right to say Sussan Ley needs to go through Christmas. She needs to be given effectively that period up to next year's budget to see if she can lift her polling numbers. And if she doesn't, then she'll go around that period. She's been kept in the job at the moment because the right's split, and this question on Hastie versus Taylor and who'll be the right's candidate is genuinely causing some vigorous debate in there on the right flank. Hastie has 3 or 4 mostly backbenchers around him, some from Queensland, some from WA, who are adamant that it's a moment for generational change, that Angus Taylor represents effectively no break from the previous coalition governments, which these right-wingers on the younger side of the party view to be kind of vapid, poll-driven, inauthentic coalition governments that didn't create clear enough battle lines with Labor. They're using kind of Abbott-era rhetoric about needing to be solidly Liberal, not a kind of pale imitation of the Teals. So this debate in the right is fascinating. Hastie's hurt himself with recent comments around abortion. His commentary around rejecting liberal orthodoxy and economics are also a serious...
I like that.
You like some of that, I know you do, but you're not the target market for this stuff, unfortunately. So, you've got...
And some highly provocative comments around Australians feeling like strangers in our own country, and the question, the big thing was, our country, who's our? And I think whether Andrew deigns to admit it, that was dangerous rhetoric, I think your masthead drew very direct parallels with Enoch Powell's famous words to the same effect. And, he's warning that blood would flow through the streets of the UK. This is in the context of migration from the ex-colonies, particularly African immigration to the UK.
Yeah, my mind went straight to that parallel, and we wrote it in the first news story on his comments, and he's expressed to his colleagues annoyance at the media coverage he's received in recent weeks and months, including from the News Corp papers. There's been some really strong commentary about Andrew Hastie from Paul Kelly, Judith Sloan. These people are doyens of the Conservative movement. So I don't think it's easy to install Hastie because he's so outside of the establishment that they'll
which is what might work for them.
It may, but it also could crash and burn. So I
So
think
it goes to your point that you're
it's a
saying
huge
about
experiment.
So Latham crashed and burned.
Yeah.
Latham got it. So Latham presented as the anti-establishment candidate, and people loved it for a while. But he fundamentally lacked discipline. He was fundamentally at odds, and I've written about this recently about Hastie. If you are always at odds with your party, it won't work in the Australian context. We are not the UK, and most importantly, we are not
the US.
The US of A. Trump and JD Vance have taken over the Grand Old Party. That can't happen in Australia. Or maybe it can, Cos, but we're living through.
It goes to the point that Paul was making about what some of the Liberals are telling him that are on Hastie's side, that, Angus Taylor is an institutional player. The institutional player mindset is actually what's killing him, right? It's why that One Nation votes jumped. But it's been in the making for some time, because all they've been farmed is this institutional rhetoric that it doesn't address people's conservatives' anxieties with a conservative solution. Now, will Hastie succeed in doing that? Well, he has the mindset for it. But his biggest problem, and I actually make this point when talking to people from across all spectrums of politics, you are defined by who you grow up with and which community you live in. And you do not understand communities you have not grown up with. And his problem is he thinks that the pathway to victory is through canning.
Yeah. Which
Right?
is unlike much of
But
Australia.
that's the weird thing.
It's not. It's through Parramatta.
This is the weird thing, because we obviously had him on the podcast.
Yes.
And he was a very thoughtful, very considered, interesting interview. He grew up in Sydney's inner west, in Ashfield. He described his father's church. And if you remember, Cosy, he described the makeup of the congregation. It was full of diverse Australians. There were lots of Asian Australians there. So
that's not the majority of his life, though.
Yes, but he's absorbed. But now he's living in the Canning Belt.
It's if your formative years,
we've got to just to impress upon people who don't listen to every single Curtin's Cast episode and miss the Hastie episode. It's what we call a peri-urban.
Yeah, peri-urban regional.
Explain that briefly.
Yeah, it's a peri-urban regional electorate. It's got some. It buttresses it up against Perth, but it's actually really a regional electorate. And I would say that, like all of us, we have to find.
What would be its equivalent in Melbourne?
There isn't really one, because of its. It's hard to compare.
Not Rob Mitchell in.
No, because too many migrants there. In Rob
that's right. McEwen is Melbourne's peri-urban electorates are vastly different to Perth's.
Maybe Sam Ray's.
No.
It's much wider than all these Melbourne and Sydney suburban.
Yeah, that's critical.
So what are the common exactly? You make a good point.
Wider and older.
Yes, 100%. We made the analysis. One thing about Canning is it's got disproportionately larger numbers of baby boomers, a disproportionately larger number of people who were born in the UK. And you go down the list. It's all the traits that, sure, they already vote for the coalition. That's not the crew you got a problem with.
Yeah. Just on this point, in Canning, I was talking to a guy who knows Hastie really well and spends a lot of time with him in WA, and he tells me about how the reception that Hastie gets in the suburbs of Canning and in just the outer suburbs of Perth. He wears his Andrew Hastie blue polo. Very well-built man, very handsome man. He gets stopped everywhere. Everyone wants a photo with him. He's seen as a superstar in this world. And then in the news poll today, it's today Monday? Yeah. In the news poll that's in the Australian today, on preferred Liberal leader, Hastie's numbers so firstly, almost half voters say they don't care and don't know, which is hilarious. But among One Nation voters, Hastie's well above any other leader.
There's a catch.
What's that?
One Nation voters who are over the age of 60 in that analysis. That's what I noticed.
One Nation above 60.
Yeah, so he's really popular amongst baby boomers.
But of all One Nation, he's
of all voters,
30% of One Nation voters.
Yeah, it's definitely One Nation voters. They like him. They prefer him over Sussan Ley. But also, they are overwhelmingly his base. If you look at the age breakout on that news poll, all of them collectively are over the age of 60. So he's really popular amongst a particular group of people who may remember that an Australia that was a little bit wider.
And there was manufacturing the cars that he was standing in front of.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's the irony, is that the car he was standing in front of was probably driven by the people who actually like him.
I'll just make one other point about Hastie that's interesting. People are debating what he's up to and using the normal frames of thinking about how politicians generally behave up here. He's very different to a lot. I mean, I haven't been here for that long, but from what I read and hear from others, he thinks differently to a lot of the others. There is a kind of pragmatism that underpins most of what politicians do. This movement to where they think they can win and how they can get a hold of power. Hastie's reading a lot about, the state of Western civilization, Judeo-Christian values. He really believes that we're at a kind of axis point in history, and that people who believe in Western values need to kind of save our countries. So I think he's influenced more by that type of, really existential thinking about where our societies are at than how to win an election.
Yeah, the comedy.
He's not thinking through electoral arithmetic.
Which was a habit of Latham. Latham did a lot of grand philosophising around
I wouldn't compare
social capital and civilization.
Vastly different human beings. A comment he made in response to a post he put up with regards to Charlie Kirk.
Remember this.
And the comment he replied to one individual said, "Sorry, mate, you've lost me." And he said, "Well, good, jump off the train because this fight's too important."
And he said, the next chapter's not for the faint-hearted.
Yes, that's right, correct. That's the
point. He's like, we're going to piss some people off and say some controversial things, but we're saving the country. That's right. How he thinks.
Yeah, that's how he thinks.
Yeah, it's very Manichaean. I'm sure he's read Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations, mid to late 90s classic. I'm sure someone will pull me up about that.
But he needs to read further back than a couple of hundred years, because the one thing that history tells you is a couple of things. First of all, societies come and go, political movements come and go, power structures collapse, and the line between a powerful organisation, be it a nation state, a tribe, or whatever it is, and collapse is ever so thin. And he needs to understand that him trying to save that thing that he's got in his mind, that it's about saving a particular culture in this country, trying to save it, could actually burn the entire church down.
And it's not clear if Australia actually is at that hinge point in its history in the minds of most of his conservative colleagues, whereas in the US, that kind of thinking is now entrenched, that, we need to rip up all the rules to change the course of the country. I'm not sure if that feeling is anywhere near as widespread in Australia, if it exists even.
Well, I would say there's definitely a very significant number of Australians who think that the system is broken.
Sure.
Right? And we could see that. I mean, in our poll that we published with the Fin, the other vote was 37%. And it's growing. And it's largely growing amongst younger voters. But here's the catch for him. 10% of Gen Z are voting coalition. When you look at the news poll numbers about him, in terms of his popularity, he's least popular amongst younger Australians.
We're focusing a lot on individuals here, Cosy and Paul, but we've seen in Victoria and New South Wales, where we describe it as succumbing to a Messiah complex. Jess Wilson, who I believe is a millennial, first female parliamentary leader of the Libs in Victoria, has taken the reins, knocking off Brad Batten last week. And we've seen Kelly Sloan become New South Wales Liberal opposition leader. I think Kelly Sloan might be Gen X.
I think so.
Yeah.
I hope she's part of my millennial Gen X Zillennials.
Amazing coups, both of them.
Cohorts.
Very unique
history.
Amazing coups, both of them. Like swift, largely bloodless, driven by factions getting together and going to a leader and saying it's done. And Speakman took a couple of days, but amazing how quick and decisive they were, and like the strategic intent behind them. Very unusual.
Libs.
Yeah, look at them.
That's why
they're heading the poll now.
That's
they're heading the news poll, right? 51.
No, well, my interpretation of the published numbers there in the news poll is that the preference based on what is there on that table that I read, you'd put Labor at about 51.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think that it was a bit harsh on the preferences. Yeah.
How do you guys feel about what Jess Wilson does, the dynamic there?
So one thing, irrespective of what the poll numbers do, right, whether it's news poll, whether it's ours, whether it's Resolve, every poll that's been published tells you one story. It's been consistently tight for 18 months. It's been consistently bad for both major parties for 18 months. Primary vote, structural problems for both of them. we are probably heading into uncharted territory next year. This is why polling Victoria is going to be very, very difficult. And for those who are listening, when you're looking at polls, including ours, when you're looking at polls going into the next 12 months, just be aware that reading that other vote is going to be very, very difficult because it's going to be massive and it's going to be incredibly influential to the outcome.
Where's it all going to go? To independents in the outer burbs? Is there a chance of a third party kind of forming? We
saw that writ large.
Let's talk about the Western independents.
So there's a bit of that. That's right. There's the Teal independents. There's a whole range.
Yeah.
One Nation might stand.
Yeah.
Right? But Werribee by-elections are really good insight into what can happen.
That's right.
Right? Where you see Labor hemorrhage an enormous amount of primary vote, doesn't go to the coalition because these people don't view the two. This is the point I keep trying to make to a number of people when we talk about these issues. Younger Australians don't think that Labor and Liberal are the solution. So then when if they're historically been a Labor voter and they're generally progressive if they're doing that, they're not going to go and choose the Liberal Party because that's like, well, you're just as bad as these bozos.
Yeah.
And
Cozzy, I reckon the next Victorian election is going to tell us a lot about the future of the Liberal Party.
I think you're right.
If Jess Wilson,
yes.
I got to say, I saw her initial message. It was slick.
Yeah.
Batten had been harping on about crime. Kos has made the point that yes, people are animated by crime. They realise there's something really
It doesn't
wrong,
win you elections,
but people don't vote on it.
No.
And he was a bit like Dutton. Dutton, the ex-copper who couldn't get out of the national security immigration frame. Batten was like that too. Jess Wilson, top of the list. We've got to get not just got to do something about the budget and debt. Do you know what she said? It could have been said by a savvy Labor politician. Why do we need to tackle this problem? So that we can fund our schools, fund our hospitals, fund essential services. That's a clever line.
100%.
She was also, of course, she said, and we'll tackle the crime crisis. And also, her third point was housing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just aimed at aspirant homeowners, it was to renters.
Yeah.
It was. I thought it was a sharp message. She can keep that up. But why I'm saying it's going to reveal a lot about the Libs. If she is able to consistently stay on message, and the Libs still copper caning at next year's November poll, that tells you a lot. And this is where Kos's data and polling is pushing us. It's saying they've got a structural problem which may be insurmountable.
Yeah.
So you can have the best leader in the world, but if there's a problem with the brand, particularly amongst Gen Z and millennials,
which it is,
then
but equally for her, all she
do?
needs to do is move it from 10% or 15% to 20%. And she needs to do the same with the millennial group as well. Now, is that a winning formula for them? No, but it may get them to a position where they start winning seats because Labor does have a significant problem in Victoria amongst Gen X.
Yeah.
And Gen X is the group that's hemorrhaging in a very big way. So coupled with a slight move, she doesn't have to do a lot of heavy lifting, right? Just a slight move in the positive direction amongst younger people, coupled with significant moves amongst Gen X, could get them
in the game.
Dozen seats, probably a little bit more, up to 16, which is what the number they need. But it's going to be tight. If everything aligns and all the planets align, it will be a tight election. But as you did point out, if the demographics become real stubborn for them,
she's so far back. I mean, that was the crazy thing about 22. It's that with all the problems Andrews faced, he went in net gain of one seat, which is just extraordinary.
Yeah, you look at what happened to the vote. It's basically the Labor primary fell and it went to minor parties.
Yeah.
The coalition vote primary didn't move. Again, structural problem. And we're seeing a continuation of that. If one thing we could say since 2022 in Victoria, both major parties have got a major problem with their primary vote.
Nick, you mentioned that even with the best leader, if they don't succeed, there'll be a sign of structural problem. It's not clear if she'll be the best leader. Like, she's 35. She's young. Who knows if she has the experience? But something that I think is worth noting.
She's first-term MP, is that right?
First term, yeah. She took over from Tim Smith after he crashed. Rest in peace.
Literally.
It's just something to note about Wilson. I think like this is part of their structural problem, Liberals, particularly to state levels, their lack of professionalism, competence. Like their leaders' offices are just bereft of talent. Their state secretaries and HQs have been nowhere near as good as the ones that you were involved in, Kos. But Jess Wilson, I should be more formal, comes from a kind of class of people who grew up together in the Liberal Party.
She's from the political class.
She's from the political class. She's really close to James Paterson. Paterson was key in this coup over the past few weeks.
Patterson's a very competent person.
Patterson's a serious person, has serious people around him.
100%.
She's already got a staffing unit that has some sharper characters than the previous three leaders.
100%.
Their state office, even though they had an issue with Stuart Smith, their director had to quit over some sexist comments. There's another few people around that state secretariat now who are good campaigners. So I think if she can keep the show on the road, and it looks like the warring factions, who I actually couldn't believe they came together to install Jess, but they have. If they can keep the show on the road and Moira Deeming keeps quiet, I can see the early signs of a competent outfit there.
Yeah, that's
a great point you make.
That's how
about the machine.
You got Patterson, Wilson,
Frydenberg, close to Wilson.
You've got Emma Mulholland. All those individuals, they're young, except for Frydenberg.
Mulholland, yeah.
That old, mate.
He's old. He's my age.
Not as fit.
Correct. So they're all young, competent, really good performers in front of a camera, and deep thinkers.
Yeah, listen, we've just obviously we launched our report on Australia-Ukraine's recovery, and James Senator Patterson spoke. I was impressed.
At your event?
He had presence and spoke off the cuff. Knew his shit. Pardon my French.
That's him.
He had presence and command in that room and gravitas.
That group, that Mulholland, Wilson, Patterson, there's some others who are in the private sector.
Too, yeah.
They all came through the IPA, the Institute of Public Affairs, together. Criticised the IPA, and that's fine. But the difference, I think there's an interesting kind of political trajectory that separates someone like Patterson from someone like Hastie, is that Hastie spent a lot of his career outside of this place, and you talk to his colleagues and they say he's effectively still learning all the ways of how things are done. So he's got a big brain, very articulate, presents well, but Patterson knows numbers, he knows process. Wilson's in that group. These people know how politics is done. So I think the Liberal Party should be hopeful that she can have a serious crack.
So coming back to Hastie, and we're rapidly running out of time. I could chat to you for hours, Paul, but I know there's other places you'd rather.
I need to go to question time, sadly.
Oh, well, we've all got day jobs. This is my day job. Hastie, Kos, Paul. Okay. He is obviously making a pitch saying I can bring back the One Nation votes. Okay. Say if he gets the leadership, and then they drift back. We've seen this with One Nation before. I've seen the movie play out. After 2016 election, as Trump first emerged, One Nation spiked 14-15%, and then ended up polling like abysmal, low single figures. But can he get the leadership with that pitch, and then pivot to the outer suburbs full of diverse Australians who aren't animated by the same issues that kind of One Nation voter that you elaborated on before? Can he do the pivot? Because you ain't going to win a general election off the back of those voters. It's got to be off the back of the Gen Z, millennials and diverse Australians.
Well, I mean, to be more blunt, if you're not winning seats in Melbourne and Sydney, you're not winning. It used to be Queensland. It's now Sydney and Melbourne. And if you count the number of seats they have lost, and I've made this point before in previous podcasts, the amount of seats that their leaders have held since the 1970s, all but one. And all of them are largely in Melbourne and Sydney.
Which one do they still have? Wannon?
They have Cook.
Cook. What was Wannon Malcolm Fraser? Anyway.
Yeah, Wannon, so you've got to go all the way back to Malcolm Fraser. So Malcolm Fraser's seats are still on their side of the ledger. But yeah, it's
the metro seats,
yeah. Well, they're all metro seats. Yeah, it's Cook.
And Cook's unique. Can I get Cook's very...
Yeah, correct. It's got the Shire and all sorts of stuff.
Simon Kennedy is good new MP who they've got there.
Yeah.
I think to your question, Nick, like the Australian system makes it hard? Is there like inbuilt guardrails to pivoting that quickly and just changing the whole
100%.
demographic that you pitch towards? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Liberals like Dutton have been talking for years about how the new base is in the outer suburbs. It doesn't just come though. They don't have infrastructure there. They don't have policies that suit those people yet. So Dutton can speak the language of suburban Australians, but it's not easy. And Labor's pretty adept, particularly with Paul Erickson, at keeping them on board. And then if Hastie tries to do that very quickly, he might alienate the moderates in his party. And if you don't have coherence, and it doesn't matter what he tries to do, the party's still
And don't think
mess.
for a minute, goes to your point, Paul, that Labor hasn't got a plan.
Yeah, exactly. For
A
all
response to him, right? Of course they do.
Yeah.
They'll have,
Yeah.
they'll have plan A, plan B in the drawer, and they'll pull it out.
It's a good point you make, though. They have been banging on about this for a while. They tried to spin a yarn, and they tried to talk up Tony's tradies as sort of akin to Howard's battlers. And, that fell over pretty quickly, and then Dutton identified this. Hastie had also identified this, but it's a bit like a flip of that. The Kevin Costner movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will
baseball?
come.
Was that a baseball?
Yeah. They haven't built anything.
Yeah.
So,
And they've also got the wrong person in mind. So if you talk about tradies, again, we go Melbourne and Sydney. It's probably, Roberto, so-and-so.
It's an
is
aged
the
care
tradies,
nurse.
right? Yeah, they was an aged care nurse or whatever. It's basically, these are diverse working class people who are socially conservative, aspirational, wealth accumulators, all of that. They're not the sort of tradie they've got in mind.
We also shouldn't overlook what you've been, well, both of you, but really leading thought leaders on this issue, particularly unique over many years. Like Labor's had huge troubles with these communities as well over time, and is still has a depressed vote in some of these areas. But they almost, through their, I don't know how you guys would describe it, like through their adeptness at campaigning in the last two elections since the 2019 review that Weatherall and Weatherall did with Albo, have managed to paper over these cracks.
Because Paul, those voters are being pushed to Labor. I've made the historical analogy with Catholics, mostly Irish Australian Catholics. They were never. There was a mythology that they're all working class and poor. That's why they voted Labor. They voted Labor and joined the Labor Party and became active in the Labor Party because of the Protestant sectarianism of the various non- and anti-Labor parties, different iterations of the Libs. So one day, if the Libs wake up,
Pull their finger out,
do the hard thinking, get the right people in leadership positions, get the campaign machine up and firing, because that is just such a problem in Victoria.
Yeah, state level.
Those conservative voters, not big C conservative voters, but by temperament and an emphasis on family, faith, they could be up for grabs, but not the way the Libs are currently operating.
And a lot of these people are uncomfortable with Labor's progressive inclinations on a bunch of different things. I think the Prime Minister, one of his best features of his Prime Ministership is shedding any sense that he is out to offend these people. He's done a fantastic job at reining all that in and across the whole party machine. I mean, it's incredible Labor had no big outbreaks at a caucus or rank and file level over Palestine. Yes, there was some grumblings, but it never really broke out.
Yeah.
Over AUKUS, one MP in the whole caucus, and he's an assistant minister, Josh Wilson. They've avoided a Corbynist outbreak. They've also kind of chopped the Greens off from under their knees. It's a pretty amazing political management, but it's not. I don't know if it's sustainable.
That's not that lack of diversity in thought and contest of ideas, Paul.
Bad.
I would argue is not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
There's no distinction between the left and right factions, and I think my argument for a long time has been is that some of the best Labor governments has been competitive tension between left and right, and between treasurers and prime ministers. I think we can see some competitive tension there between Jim Chalmers and Albo.
Ambition tension. I'm not sure about creative.
Well, yes, that's probably a better way of putting it. But I'm not. I think you're getting somewhere. I think that discipline, caucus discipline, how long it'll hold up, I don't know. There's some really ambitious people on the backbench, and we're not seeing people out there, floating policies. And I think that could
45%
be detrimental to Labor in the long term.
45% of Gen Z women across the entire country, doesn't matter where they live, are voting Green at the moment. And
what's Gen Z, 18 to?
18 to 28 at the moment. There's still another 5 years of them to come. And so when we look into the future, this generation is clearly looking for inspiration and reform to fix the problems they think they are confronting as young adults. Goes to your point, Nick. Right now, you could put an argument on the table saying, well, there's no real reform coming out of the Labor government. And so I would not rule out the Greens winning seats again in a very big way next election unless something happens. But there's two things. One, Labor stumps up the reform and fixes that problem.
Yep.
Two, One Nation becomes a major threat. And what we do know is young progressives do coalesce to Labor to stop right-wing minor parties.
Yep.
So that's a factor. And I think the last point is that if they do none of that and One Nation is not a threat, then yes, the Greens will pick up a lot of seats.
It's easy to forget last election when the Greens losing all those seats and Labor killing the coalition. Like, Labor was drifting for a long period of last term. Wasn't clear about its agenda.
Yes.
Really only when they flicked the switch to talking about what the second term would be, talking about Medicare, bringing the cost
people
of
look for a
living
vision.
front. Yeah, that's when they want. So this model that Labor runs is not necessarily successful.
No.
In during a term.
Paul, Kos has made this point. When do things turn around? End of 2024. Why? The campaign professionals came in. The
Paul Erickson.
The Kung Fu Cossies of the world, Paul Erickson.
Don't worry about the cabinet and the PMO.
He's the rub.
Getting the guys with the computers.
Paul Sakkal. We could talk forever, but I know you're a champion of it to get back into to watching the circus of question time. It's been a pleasure having you on Curtin's Cast. Thank you, Kung Fu Kos. Thank you, Paul. Spasiba. And to our Curtinistas, don't forget you can check us out. You probably are checking us out right now on Apple. You can also check us out on Spotify and YouTube. And don't forget to refer a mate. But on our Ukrainian and Russian theme, that's all for now. It's Do Svidaniya, Baka.